Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts. Our guest today is coming to us from the United Kingdom. She is Sade Fadipe, and she's here to celebrate a visit to Grandad, an African ABC. Hey, before our guest comes in, we gave a sneak preview of the Solve It for Kids podcast here on Reading with Your Kids, and it was so popular, it's like spun off. It spun off into its own thing. And my buddy, our dean of all things STEM and STEAM, Jennifer Swanson, is here to tell us a little bit about what's going on with this great new podcast. Hey, Jennifer, what's up?
Hi, Jed. Oh, I am so excited about our new podcast. We've been getting some great reviews. Everybody wants to find out what's going on and meet and listen to some of our scientists and engineers. We have done how do you map an underwater forest?
Yeah.
We have done how do you cut a person in half safely, of course.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
We have talked about improving your connection with water by going on a water walk, and we have watched Vanessa Brantley Newton create illustrations that come to life.
I took a water walk with my amazing niece. We had such a great time. I didn't fall into the water, but it was really, really fun. And I love the fact that all of our guests are giving our wonderful listeners challenges, really fun challenges that they can do together as a family. And that's so cool. Hey, tell everybody where they can find Solve It for Kids, because it's not on the Reading with Your Kids podcast. It's its own thing.
So please, if you want to keep listening, go over to iTunes and Apple Podcasts and subscribe. And you can download all 4 of the first episodes that we have, plus listen to all the new ones we have coming out. You can also find on Stitcher Radio and, of course, through our website, solveitforkids.com.
Jennifer, thanks so much. Thanks for letting me be part of this awesome, awesome, awesome podcast.
Well, we make a great STEM team, don't you think?
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, join us over at solveitforkids.com. Joining us right now from Essex, outside of London in the United Kingdom. She is the author of a number of books, one of them being A Visit to Grandad, an African ABC. Please welcome to the show, Sade Fadipe. Sade, how are you?
Hello, I'm fine, thank you.
As Sade was giving me a lesson in how to properly pronounce her last name. I know I didn't do it perfectly. I was supposed to put a little in the P. But thankfully, she said, no, you just do it however you can. We understand you have special needs. I'm really happy that you're on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here. It's a bright hot summer's day today. And yeah, I'd rather have my fan on because we don't have air conditioning here. We don't get this much sun, so we don't invest in air conditioning.
That's what I heard about Europe, is that they don't have air conditioning. And it's hard for me to fathom, because here in the States, if you go to a place like Puerto Rico or Florida, or even in Panama City in Panama, when we visited there, it seemed like we just went from one air-conditioned environment to another, and we spent a little bit of time walking to the air-conditioned car in the heat, but otherwise, you were kind of comfortable all the time.
Yeah, kind of.
Interesting.
Until days like these come around.
Well, I'm really excited that you're on here, because you write about a subject that I celebrate. When I am performing my educational magic shows, especially in a library, I explain to the kids that they're in a magical place, because books are something that they can use to travel back into time and to travel all around the world. And that's kind of why you write.
Certainly, certainly. I mean, I know that not everyone is ever going to have a chance to go to Africa, specifically West Africa. And so I am unapologetic about what I reveal through my books. I just want to take people on that journey. So when you asked me to think about a topic, I just thought, oops, books and journeys, because that's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us about A Visit to Grandad, an African ABC. This is a beautiful book.
Yes, it is. And this book in itself has had its own journey. It came out in 2015 as a fun ABC when we spent time out in Nigeria. When we relocated to England, it came with me in 2016, and it's also called a fun ABC, but as a paperback and a larger format. 2 years after that, guess what happened? Somebody in the United States of America said, oh, we want that book too, but we want it bigger, and gosh, you have to call it A Visit to Grandad, because that is what it's all about.
Awesome,
So,
awesome.
It's had its own journeys.
Yeah, what a neat journey. Now, I'm imagining that in A Visit to Grandad, an African ABC, we're not going to be doing the same words. C for cat and D for dog. We have something completely different going on?
Not at all. It's actually a story. So it's an ABCdarian story. Or you might call it an ABCdarian. I don't know what you call it, but it's an ABC story. And it takes you on a journey about a girl. They had planned to go to visit their grandfather, but little sister falls sick. So little sister has to stay at home. Big sister goes on the journey, has a lot of fun, no technology, no phones, no iPads, no Wii games, nothing. But she still has a lot of fun, even in the rain. And at the end of the story, she tells her sister all about what she did. Now, the unique part about the story is that A is for Adana, which is a girl's name in Nigeria, which means princess. And Z is also a girl's name, which is Zainab. So we've got Adana starting off the story and ending it with Zainab. And it's beautifully illustrated. We've got things like yams. Some people may never have heard about yams. And this is one of the things that I do. When I go into schools, I take foods into school. I take African food into schools. I take drums into school. I take things that depict the culture. You know, name it, I take it with me. And as I leave, the kids look at me and think, you're not taking that back with you, are you? Yeah, of course I am. I'm going back to my country. Well, not really. Back down the road. So this is what I do. And, the book has its own journey. It comes with me wherever I go. I take my drums. And, we have fun.
That's wonderful. I love the fact that we're able to get a little bit of African culture and also, but more specifically Nigerian culture. I think one of the things that's wonderful when kids get a chance to meet you is not only kids, but a lot of people, they say Africa like, oh, it's just one big giant and everybody in Africa is the same. And they don't realize that Africa is actually a number of different countries and a number of different cultures and languages and customs.
Very true, very true. And that's why within the story itself, the name Adana comes from a different region of Nigeria than Zainab. And then there's another name within the story called Sumbo. So we have three main language regions within the country. We do have about 250 languages, but we've got them in regions. And so these three names come from those three main regions. So we've got Adana, we've got Sumbo, and we've got Zainab, and they all speak different. Ideally, they're meant to speak different languages, but in the story, they speak one. Because English is our lingua franca.
Yes, that's something, again, something that a lot of folks don't understand, that English is spoken throughout Nigeria. What's it like? You shared with me before we started that you've spent a lot of time, you were born in the United Kingdom, but you chose to go and live in Africa a couple of times. What's that like, bouncing between cultures like that?
It just means I'm a bouncer. No, really, I think when you grow up being bicultural, I lived with, so I started my journey living with my foster mother, with myself and my brother, and we were always in between our foster mother and our parents. So from being 3 months old, I was either with my foster parents who were white English, or with my parents who were black African Nigerians studying in the UK. So we'd always gone to mum and dad during the holidays, come back to our foster parents. So for me, being bicultural it's like drinking water. It's just, it flows. Which means that sometimes it's hard for me to identify between the two cultures until I started writing and started being intentional about what I wanted to display about myself. Now, the second book that I wrote, which is called Snowy Joy, which is a chapter book, reflects more of that biculturalism. You know, it reflects more of me being British and being Nigerian. It just comes, it flows, it's natural. That's who I am.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. My family is bicultural as well. My wife's family is originally from Puerto Rico, and my ancestors are from Ireland. And I remember one of the things that was so funny is I remember when I became engaged with my wife, a number of my friends came up and said, "Oh, are you sure? The cultures are so different. It's going to be so hard." And I was madly in love with my wife, and whatever the differences are, we can deal with it. And when it came down to it, about the biggest differences between the Irish culture that my family kind of brought over from Europe and the Puerto Rican culture my wife's family brought up from the Caribbean is that they spoke Spanish and they ate rice, and my family spoke English and we ate potatoes. Other than that, we were people, and we loved being together, and we loved having fun together.
Very true. Very true. We're human. Mm-hmm. That's who we are.
Yeah. What kind of reaction do you get when you go in and you deliver this message of kind of, universal humanity to people? Do you ever get people pushing back?
Oh, children are innocent. Mm-hmm. And I see the amazement in their faces, and it's almost as if they're sucking every single word, in. And then you see the teachers looking back at, I'm thinking, let kids be kids, and so it's usually after I come away from such events that I then get the feedback either from the parents to say, wow, you've just empowered our kids, or a letter from the head teacher to say, thank you ever so much. I think the teachers are always in between because they're not too sure as to whether is this really meant for our kids, especially if I go into a school where there's just one black kid, mm-hmm. And some of them, but kids love information, they love knowledge, they love going on journeys. And when I take a Fun ABC or Visit to Grandad into schools, it is a journey on its own. And the kids jump on board with no reservations whatsoever. So for me, it's just been awesome.
Yeah.
It's been an awesome journey.
We've talked with a lot of authors here in the United States about the importance of kids of color seeing themselves portrayed in the pictures of books, especially being portrayed positively. I believe that it's equally important for kids from the dominant culture here in the States, for white kids to see kids of color portrayed positively in the pages of books. Talk a little bit about what do you think? You're speaking about that school where there's only one black kid in the school. How important is it for those other kids to learn about Nigerian culture and kids from different cultures?
So, bringing to recall a particular school that we went to, not only went to read a book, but we also went to celebrate Black History Month. And it was, children were excited about dressing up. We dressed them up. We did the head ties. We did the dances. We did so much with the children. And, looking at the one child who all this while had felt like that tiny dot in the middle, you could just see him glow. And I could see his friends gathering around him to celebrate him and say, oh, now we get it. Now we see it. Now we understand that, you're like us. It's just that we have a culture that we haven't gotten to understand. And so it's empowering for the white children. It's knowledge for the white children. I don't think any child could have had a fun ABC or Visit to Grandad read to them and them not come away feeling like they've been empowered positively and culturally.
Yeah, I love that. What inspired you to start to write children's books?
Oh, okay, that's a completely different story on its own. There were two reasons. When I went back with my parents to live in Nigeria, it wasn't a choice. I just had to go with them. And so I experienced the rural life. My grandfather was a chief and he had vast land. He had factories. He had citrus factories. And so I had the experience of living in the outdoors with my grandfather when I went on holidays, but I'd also had that experience growing up in the UK, living in the very rural South Sussex part of the UK, and then it was, we were out all days, and so for me that was a place I could go to that reminded me of my time in England. Now when we went out, took our kids out to Nigeria. My parents lived in massive houses with big gates and lived in the city. I thought, oh gosh, here is me wanting to give them an experience of what I had, but it's nowhere to be found. So I had to recreate it. I mean, I remember being so excited if I came across like a hut or something. That's a hut, and I'd get excited. So I thought, okay, instead of doing this and then embarrassing myself, why don't I put in a book and make it real? So yeah, that's what I did.
That's wonderful. I'm excited. One of the things that people talk about is how exciting it is as an author to receive that first author's copy of your book, and you've received a number of different author's copies. Your African ABC book has had its own journey. What was that like, seeing the different variations of your book as the time went by?
Especially with a Visit to Grandad, that has had that's on its third edition so far. Every edition feels like a new baby. Every edition feels like, oh wow, that's even better. That's better than the first, and that one's better than the second. And I'm not sure. I don't know if I can't compare it because I've had kids, but I have a friend who's never had children and is an author, and we call them her babies. We just say, oh, that's, we call them her baby, and that's what it is, because for starters, it's a long journey. Some people boast about writing a book in 3 weeks or writing a book in 5 weeks. I don't know how they do that. I doubt that you can produce a really good children's book within 5 months. I don't know, but that's not been my story. And so the process of getting the script right, getting the illustrations right, getting the typesetting, getting the, obviously, I mean, I'm traditionally published and self-published. And so there are different journeys, and it is, it's a blessing just to see the end result and say, right, I give this to the world. Because the moment you put a stamp on it, it goes out into the world, it's got its ISBN, you've got loads of prints, it's no longer yours. It's someone else's. It belongs to the world from then on.
Wow. What kind of stories do you think families can tell sitting down, reading this book together with their kids? What kind of conversations do you think they can have?
Okay, so there are conversations about, there were certain things that were intentional about a fun ABC. The first was the gender roles. So you see the father taking the daughter into the village, driving a car. Going to pick her, you see the mother coming to pick her in a van. You see the grandfather making the meals for his granddaughter. These are stereotypes that are being challenged within the African society. Because some people say, why is the grandfather slicing eggs for her? Why is the grandfather making her meals? The male, that dominant male character is being challenged over and over again, that what a man can do, a woman can also do. So that's one of the things, that's one of the conversations that we have. Another interesting one that children brought out had to do with, there's a page called P is for Pump, we fetch water in our kegs. And children say, why do they have to fetch water in their kegs? Why can't they just switch the taps on? And I have to do this story about how in some countries, children have to go all the way to the streams to fetch the water and bring it all the way back home because there are no water pipe connections from the river stream into the homes. And I have children come up with lots of different ideas. And I've had a young boy who said, I went to Sudan and that was the same when we went to Sudan and we had no water. And so we had to wake up at night. And these are the conversations that the children bring to light. Another conversation had to do with ants around my plate. There are ants dancing around my plate. Why would ants be dancing around your plate? We talk about the heat of the summer and the ants, because of the outdoor, the ruralness of the story. We're closer to nature. So of course the ants will come crawling. So there are all these conversations that can be had just around a book that is titled in the UK, A Fun ABC, and titled in the US, A Visit to Grandad. But there are conversations. M is for mosquito net. There's one around my bed. We talk about malaria. We talk about why we need to put mosquito nets around our beds, and why children, why mosquitoes are still inhabiting Africa. There's so much that we can talk about, so much. Each page is a conversation on its own. That's all.
Wow, so much to talk about. This is beautiful. I definitely want to encourage everybody to check out A Visit to Grandad and African ABC. Sade, how can folks connect with you online and find out more about you and more about your wonderful books?
Okay, so I am on Instagram, and the name on Instagram is Sade Books World. Sade Books World Instagram, Twitter, Sade Fadipe on Twitter, Sade Fadipe on Facebook, SadeFadipe.com website. Just my name really.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, we've had a great time speaking to the author of A Visit to Grandad and African ABC, Sade Fadipe. Sade, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you ever so much, Jed. It's been fun. Thank you for having me.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Linda Marshall. She'll be here to talk about her picture book biography of Dr. Jonas Salk. It's called The Polio Pioneer. If you are the author of a fantastic children's book, you may be frustrated that all of the traditional ways to promote your book, author visits at schools, at libraries, book signings, all of those are pretty much unavailable to authors right now because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the restrictions that have been placed on schools and libraries and in public places all around the world. We have something that has helped an awful lot of authors, and you might want to check it out. It's called the Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read Program. If our panel of educators, parents, and kids believe that your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read. And with that seal of approval comes a number of really fantastic tools that can help your book stand out from the crowd of books that are published every single month. Check it out today at our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the Author Services button that you'll find at the top of the page. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so very wonderful. Of course, I want to thank our guest, Sade Fadipe. Please be sure to check out A Visit to Grandad, an African ABC. I also want to thank my incredible team, starting with my producer, Fatima Khan, my awesome author ambassador, Peggy Cotto, the brand new member of our team, my amazing daughter, Alejandra. And of course, I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. But most of all, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.